They thought they could control us, put Earth in chains with words dressed as peace. In the grand chambers of Nexus Prime, surrounded by thousands of alien delegates, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood alone and spoke for all of humanity. When the Council voted to strip us of freedom, we didn't beg, we didn't protest, we walked. And in that silence, order shattered, systems failed, empires trembled, because the galaxy never feared what we might do, until they saw what happened when we were gone. The final assembly. The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers stretched toward the artificial sky of Nexus Prime, its transparent walls revealing the swirling nebulae that painted the station's eternal twilight. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the human delegation's platform, her dark eyes scanning the thousands of alien representatives arranged in concentric circles around the central speaking floor. After 15 years of diplomatic service, she had never seen the chamber so tense with anticipation. Elena adjusted her navy blue diplomatic uniform, feeling the weight of her species' future pressing down on her shoulders. The golden insignia of Earth gleamed on her collar, a small reminder of the blue world that had sent her here to represent humanity among the stars. At 43, she had devoted her life to building bridges between humans and the galaxy's countless civilizations. Today, those bridges were about to burn. High Counselor Thexvar of the Zolonian hegemony called the session to order with a resonant chime from his ceremonial staff. His pale blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber's lights as he spread his 4 arms in the traditional gesture of assembly. Representatives of the Galactic Council, we gather today to address the human question that has divided our civilizations for the past solar year. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of translation devices converting thousands of languages into comprehensible meaning. Elena felt her heart rate increase as she prepared for what she knew would be humanity's final diplomatic stand. The past months had seen increasing pressure from the older galactic civilizations, all demanding that humanity accept what they called protective custody status. The human species, Thexvar continued, his voice carrying the authority of 3,000 years of galactic governance, has demonstrated technological advancement at a rate unprecedented in recorded history. In merely 2 centuries since achieving faster-than-light travel, they have developed innovations that surpass civilizations 10 times their age. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Elena recognized the mixture of fear and resentment in their voices. Humanity's rapid progress had unsettled species that had required millennia to achieve similar breakthroughs. The quantum communication networks, adaptive AI systems, and revolutionary energy sources that human scientists had created in mere decades represented a threat to the established order. Council Delegate Morthak of the Christine Empire rose from his crystalline throne, his faceted body refracting light in dazzling patterns. The humans' reckless pace of development endangers galactic stability. Their quantum experiments have created dimensional rifts that threaten neighboring systems. Their artificial intelligence research skirts the boundaries of consciousness itself. They must be contained before their ambitions destroy us all. Elena stepped forward, activating her translation matrix to ensure her words reached every corner of the vast chamber. Honorable delegates, humanity has always shared our discoveries freely with the galactic community. Our quantum networks have revolutionized communication across star systems. Our medical advances have extended lifespans for dozens of species. Our agricultural innovations have ended famine on 17 worlds. The Vorthon representative, resembling a massive octopus with silver tentacles, pulsed disapproval through his chromatic skin. Your species advances too quickly, human ambassador. You have not learned the wisdom of patience that comes with millennia of existence. Your innovations destabilize economies that have functioned for eons. You mean they threaten your monopolies, Elena replied, her voice carrying across the chamber with quiet steel. For 3,000 years, the same dozen species have controlled galactic technology, trade, and governance. Humanity's crime is not recklessness, but success that challenges your authority. The chamber erupted in angry chittering, harmonic growls, and electromagnetic pulses of outrage. Thexvar slammed his staff against the central podium, its chime cutting through the chaos. Ambassador Rodriguez, you will observe proper diplomatic protocol. Elena stood straighter, drawing on every lesson her mentor had taught her about negotiating with species that viewed humanity as upstart children. I observe the protocol of truth, High Counselor. The protected status you propose would place humanity under the supervision of the Zolonian hegemony, the Christine Empire, and the Vorthon Collective, the same civilizations whose technological stagnation we have repeatedly surpassed. Delegate Zephyra of the Ethereal Consortium floated forward, her gaseous form shimmering with agitation. Your species lacks the maturity to handle advanced technology responsibly. The dimensional incident at Kepler 442 could have destabilized an entire sector. That incident was caused by faulty Vorthan-manufactured containment fields, Elena shot back. Our scientists corrected the problem within hours using principles your engineers claimed were impossible. We prevented a disaster created by your outdated technology. The truth of Elena's words hung in the chamber like an uncomfortable silence. The dimensional rift at Kepler 442 had indeed been caused by Vorthon equipment failure, but admitting this publicly would humiliate one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Human intervention had not only prevented catastrophe, but had resulted in new dimensional physics that made such accidents impossible. High Counselor Thexvar gestured for silence. The vote has been called. All civilizations with council status must decide. Should humanity be granted protective custody status under the supervision of senior galactic powers, or should they be permitted to continue their unchecked development? Elena watched as the voting displays illuminated throughout the chamber. Green lights indicated support for human independence, while red lights supported the protective custody proposal. The pattern that emerged made her heart sink with growing dismay. The Andorian Republic voted red. The Celestial Federation voted red. The Nexus Alliance voted red. One by one, the galaxy's civilizations chose to cage humanity rather than compete with them. The older species voted almost unanimously for restrictions, their fear of human innovation overriding thousands of years of supposed wisdom. Even species that had benefited enormously from human technology chose safety over fairness. The final tally appeared on the central display in stark, undeniable numbers. 847 civilizations voted for protective custody. Only 12 abstained. Not a single civilization voted to support human independence. Elena felt the weight of that betrayal settle in her chest like a cold stone. For 15 years, she had worked to build trust between humanity and the galaxy. She had negotiated trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaborations. She had believed that merit and contribution would earn humanity respect among the stars. She had been wrong. High Counselor Thexvar raised his staff in preparation for the ceremonial acceptance of the vote. By the authority vested in this council by the Galactic Charter, humanity will be placed under protective custody effective immediately. Human colonies will be supervised by appointed governors. Human research will require council approval. Human vessels will be restricted to designated shipping lanes. No. The single word cut through the chamber like a blade. Elena stood at her platform, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had just made an irreversible decision. Humanity rejects this vote, rejects this council, and rejects the authority you claim over us. The chamber fell into stunned silence. In 3,000 years of galactic governance, no species had ever rejected a council mandate. The very concept was unthinkable. Ambassador Rodriguez, Thexvar said, his voice tight with shock. You cannot simply refuse council authority. The vote is binding on all member civilizations. Elena smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several alien delegates unconsciously retreat. High Counselor, you have just voted to treat humanity as children incapable of governing ourselves. But children can be ignored when they refuse to obey. Adults who refuse to submit become something else entirely. She activated her personal communicator, broadcasting on frequencies that reached every human settlement, ship, and station across the galaxy. This is Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, speaking for humanity to all human citizens in Council space. The Galactic Council has voted to place our species under permanent subjugation. Therefore, by the authority granted to me by the Human Colonial Assembly, I formally declare humanity's withdrawal from galactic civilization. The words hit the chamber like a shockwave. Delegates who had been smugly confident in their victory suddenly realized what Elena's declaration meant. Humanity wasn't just rejecting council authority, they were leaving entirely. All human personnel are ordered to cease cooperation with council species immediately, Elena continued, her voice reaching across light years to human colonies and research stations. All human-developed technologies are to be secured or destroyed rather than abandoned. All human citizens are to evacuate council territories within 30 standard days. Delegate Morthak's crystalline form flashed with panic. You cannot be serious. Human technology supports vital infrastructure across hundreds of worlds. Your evacuation would cause civilizational collapse. Then perhaps you should have considered that before voting to make us your subjects, Elena replied. Humanity has spent 2 centuries sharing our innovations freely with the galaxy. We built your communication networks, designed your medical systems, and solved your engineering problems. If you believe we're too immature to govern ourselves, then surely you won't miss our contributions." The chamber exploded into chaos as delegates realized the implications of Elena's words. The Zephyrian trade network relied entirely on human-designed logistics algorithms. The Christine Empire's defense grid used human artificial intelligence systems. The Vorthon Collective's energy distribution depended on human quantum field generators. High Counselor Thex Var slammed his staff repeatedly, trying to restore order. "Ambassador, you must reconsider. The economic disruption alone would affect billions of beings across the galaxy." Elena gathered her diplomatic materials with calm precision, her actions watched by thousands of alien eyes. "High Counselor, you have just declared that humanity lacks the wisdom to make decisions about our own future. I'm sure the galaxy's older and wiser species will find solutions to any problems that arise from our departure." She turned to leave the platform, then paused and looked back at the assembled delegates. "Oh, and council members, when your infrastructure fails, your trade routes collapse, and your civilizations start struggling without human innovation, remember this moment. Remember that you chose fear over cooperation, restriction over partnership, and pride over progress." Elena walked toward the chamber exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind her, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy sat in stunned realization of what they had just lost. They had tried to cage humanity, and instead had driven them away entirely. As she reached the exit, Elena activated her communicator one final time. "To all human citizens, pack your bags. We're going home. And this time, we're not coming back." The great crystal dome of the council chambers seemed to dim as Elena disappeared through the exit. In the silence that followed, 847 civilizations began to understand that they had just made the greatest diplomatic mistake in galactic history. Humanity was leaving, and they were taking their genius with them. The great exodus, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the cargo vessel Resilience as it descended through the atmosphere of New Geneva, humanity's largest agricultural colony in the Zephyrian sector. The planet's twin suns cast golden light across endless fields of modified wheat and protein farms that had fed 17 different species for the past 60 years. In 72 hours, it would all be abandoned. Sarah's weathered hands gripped the command console as she watched evacuation shuttles rise from the surface like mechanical birds fleeing a storm. At 55, she had spent 30 years running cargo between human colonies and alien worlds. She had never imagined she would be leading the largest evacuation in human history. "Captain, we have confirmation from Sector 7, reported Lieutenant David Park, her communications officer. "All agricultural equipment has been either loaded or destroyed per evacuation protocols. The genetic seed banks are secure aboard the Harmony." Sarah nodded grimly. Ambassador Rodriguez's orders had been clear. Nothing that could benefit the species who had voted to subjugate humanity would be left behind. If the galaxy wanted to treat humans like children, they could learn to feed themselves like adults. The irony was not lost on her. New Geneva produced enough food to sustain 40 billion beings across 12 star systems. The modified crops that human scientists had developed could grow in almost any environment and produce 3 times the nutrition of native alternatives. Without human agricultural expertise, food shortages would spread across the galaxy within months. "Captain, incoming priority message from Earth Command," Lieutenant Park announced. "It's Dr. Marcus Webb from the Galactic Infrastructure Analysis Division." Sarah accepted the transmission, and the holographic image of a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes appeared on her bridge. Dr. Webb looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably accurate given his assignment to catalog humanity's integration into galactic civilization. "Sarah, I need you to understand what we're dealing with," Marcus said without preamble. "I've spent the past week analyzing human contributions to galactic infrastructure. The results are staggering. We're not just participants in galactic civilization, we're the foundation it's built on." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean, Marcus?" "The quantum communication network that connects 90% of Council worlds? Human-designed and maintained. The AI systems that manage trade routes between star systems? Human-programmed. The medical technology that has doubled average lifespans for most species? Human-developed. Sarah, we didn't just join galactic civilization, we revolutionized it." Marcus activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy's major trade routes as glowing lines of light. "Watch this," he said, and began highlighting human contributions in blue. Within seconds, the entire display was dominated by blue connections. Every major shipping lane depends on human logistics algorithms. Every communication relay uses human quantum field generators. Every medical facility relies on human diagnostic systems. Sarah stared at the display in shock. They voted to restrict us, but they can't function without us. It gets worse, Marcus continued. The Zephyrian Empire's entire defense grid runs on human artificial intelligence. Their ships, their orbital platforms, their planetary shields, all controlled by systems our programmers designed. The Christine Empire's energy distribution network uses human quantum field technology. The Vorthan Collective's industrial production is managed by human automation systems. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. When we leave, galactic civilization collapses, Marcus finished. Not gradually. Not partially, completely. We estimate total infrastructure failure within 6 months, possibly sooner. Sarah closed the transmission and turned to her crew. The bridge of the Resilience had become silent as her officers absorbed what they had just heard. They were not just evacuating from hostile territory, they were pulling the keystone from an arch that had held up galactic society for 2 centuries. 3 days later, the first reports began arriving from across the galaxy. On Zephyr Prime, the homeworld of the Empire that had led the vote against humanity, communication networks had begun failing as quantum relays lost their stabilization protocols. Human technicians had been maintaining the delicate balance that kept faster-than-light communication stable. Without them, messages that once crossed the galaxy in hours now took weeks or failed entirely. Commander Lisa Torres of the Human Research Station Discovery watched from her observation deck as Zephyrian military vessels drifted helplessly in space around their orbital defense platforms. The AI systems that controlled their weapons, navigation, and life support had entered emergency shutdown when human oversight disappeared. Ships that had patrolled the galaxy for decades now floated like metal sculptures, beautiful but useless. "Commander, we're receiving distress signals from the Zephyrian fleet," reported her tactical officer. "Their ships are losing power and life support. They're requesting immediate assistance." Lisa felt no satisfaction in the aliens' predicament. These were beings she had worked alongside for years, shared meals with, and considered friends. But they had voted to cage her species, and now they were learning the price of that decision. "Send them our technical manuals for manual override procedures," Lisa ordered. "If they want to survive without human help, they'll need to learn how their own ships actually work." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on thousands of worlds. The Christine Empire's energy grid began fluctuating wildly as human-designed quantum field generators lost their calibration. Cities that had enjoyed unlimited clean energy for decades suddenly faced rolling blackouts. Industrial complexes shut down as automated systems failed without human programming support. On Nexus Prime, High Counselor Thexvar stood in his private chambers watching reports flood in from across Council space. Each new transmission brought worse news. Trade routes were collapsing as shipping algorithms failed. Medical facilities were suspending operations as diagnostic systems malfunctioned. Agricultural worlds were facing crop failures as human-designed environmental controls went offline. "High Counselor," his aide reported, "we have received formal requests for emergency assistance from 47 council members. The Andorian Republic is reporting complete failure of their interstellar communication grid. The Celestial Federation's orbital habitats are experiencing life support failures. The Nexus Alliance's trade fleet is stranded in deep space with navigation system malfunctions." Thexvar's forearms trembled as he absorbed the magnitude of the crisis. "How long until we can replace the human systems with our own technology?" His aide consulted a datapad with obvious reluctance. "Our engineers estimate 10 to 15 years for basic functionality, assuming we can reverse engineer the human innovations. Full replacement could take decades." "Years?" Thexvar's voice cracked with disbelief. "Our civilizations will collapse within months." "Yes, High Counselor. The humans integrated their technology so thoroughly into our infrastructure that removing it is like removing the circulatory system from a living body." Meanwhile, Admiral James Torres commanded the human evacuation from the bridge of the battleship Defiance. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched alien vessels attempting to intercept departing human ships. The aliens' desperation had overcome their pride, and they were now trying to force human technicians to remain and maintain their failing systems. "Admiral, the Zephyrian battlecruiser Domination is moving to intercept our convoy from Sector 12, reported his tactical officer. "They're demanding that our engineers return to repair their communication networks." James smiled coldly. The domination had been built using human defensive algorithms and powered by human energy systems. He knew every weakness in its design because human engineers had advised on its construction. Signal the domination, James ordered. Inform them that any attempt to detain human citizens will be considered an act of war. Remind them that their weapon systems were designed by the same humans they're trying to capture. The alien ship maintained its course for several more minutes before finally veering away. Its captain had realized the same truth that was dawning on military commanders across the galaxy. Ships designed with human help were useless against humans who knew every detail of their construction. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the evacuation progress from the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony. As humanity's former ambassador, she had become the unofficial coordinator of the exodus. Reports streamed in from every corner of the galaxy as human colonies packed up and departed. "Elena, we're receiving desperate communications from dozens of Council species," reported her communications officer. "They're begging us to reconsider, offering massive concessions if we'll return." Elena read through the increasingly frantic offers. The Zephyrian Empire was offering humanity full autonomous status and a permanent seat on the ruling council. The Christine Empire promised exclusive trading rights and territorial concessions. The Vorthan Collective was offering to share their most advanced technologies. "Too little, too late," Elena said quietly. "They had their chance to treat us as equals. They chose subjugation instead. Now they can learn to live with that choice." By the end of the second week, galactic civilization was in freefall. The carefully maintained balance of trade, communication, and technology that had sustained thousands of worlds for millennia was crumbling without human expertise. Species that had never learned to maintain their own infrastructure found themselves helpless as systems failed around them. The Ethereal Consortium's gas mining operations in the Helix Nebula shut down completely when human-designed atmospheric processors stopped working. The Temporal Syndicate's time research facilities went dark as quantum stability fields collapsed. Even the mighty Void Walkers found their dimensional technology failing without human calibration protocols. Food riots broke out on dozens of worlds as agricultural systems failed. The modified crops that had eliminated hunger across the galaxy required precise environmental controls that only human technicians knew how to maintain. Store shelves emptied as trade routes collapsed and shipping schedules fell apart. On Earth, President Catherine Walsh addressed the human population scattered across the galaxy. Her message was broadcast on secure quantum channels that bypassed the failing alien communication networks. "My fellow humans," she began, "we are witnessing the collapse of a civilization that chose fear over friendship, restriction over cooperation. The galaxy is learning a harsh lesson about the value of partnership versus domination. We will not abandon innocent beings to suffer, but neither will we return to accept chains disguised as protection." As the evacuation entered its third week, something unexpected happened. Younger alien species began to break ranks with the Council. The Novari Republic, a civilization only 500 years old, formally apologized for their vote and requested permission to maintain diplomatic relations with humanity. The Stellar Commonwealth followed suit, offering to provide safe passage for human refugees. These younger civilizations had benefited most from human innovation and were least invested in the old power structures. They recognized that the galaxy's future lay with cooperation, not domination. Elena received a priority transmission from High Counselor Thexvar himself. The proud Zilonian leader appeared haggard and desperate, his usual commanding presence replaced by obvious panic. "Ambassador Rodriguez," he began, "I speak for the Council when I say we were hasty in our decision. Perhaps we can find a compromise, a way for humanity to remain part of galactic civilization while addressing the concerns of our member species." Elena looked at the alien leader who had orchestrated humanity's humiliation and felt only pity. "High Counselor, you had 2 centuries to find compromise. Instead, you chose to treat us like dangerous children who needed supervision. The galaxy is now learning what happens when you try to cage the people who built your civilization." The transmission ended, leaving Thexvar staring at a blank screen. Behind him, his aides brought more reports of systems failures, civil unrest, and economic collapse. The Great Galactic Council, which had maintained order for 3,000 years, was fracturing as member species blamed each other for the catastrophe. The human exodus continued, and with each departing ship, the galaxy slipped further toward chaos. Humanity had tried to be partners in a galactic civilization, but the older species had chosen to see them as threats instead of allies. Now the galaxy would learn to survive without the humans they had driven away, and the lesson would be written in the collapse of everything they had built together. The Reckoning. 3 months after humanity's exodus began, Admiral James Torres stood in the command center of New Horizon, humanity's first independent station in the uncharted regions beyond Council space. The massive facility hung in the void between galaxies, its hull gleaming with the advanced alloys that human engineers had perfected in the years before their departure. Around it, a growing fleet of human vessels worked to establish what would become the foundation of humanity's new civilization. James studied the holographic displays showing the current state of Council space. The reports painted a picture of unprecedented collapse. What had taken thousands of years to build was unraveling in mere months. The irony was bitter but undeniable. The species that had claimed humanity was too dangerous to govern itself were now tearing each other apart in the absence of human stability. "Admiral, we're receiving another diplomatic transmission from Council space," reported Commander Rachel Kim, his communications officer. "This one is from the Zephyrian Empire directly." James nodded grimly. The transmissions had been arriving daily for weeks, each more desperate than the last. Former allies who had voted to restrict humanity now begged for their return, offering concessions that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "Put it through, but keep it encrypted. I don't want Council intelligence monitoring our communications." The holographic form of Emperor Zephys himself materialized in the command center. The proud ruler of the galaxy's most powerful military force looked haggard and exhausted. His golden scales, once lustrous with health and authority, had dulled to a sickly yellow. Dark circles surrounded his reptilian eyes. "Admiral Torres," Zephys began, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "I speak not as an emperor, but as a leader watching his civilization crumble. My people are dying. Our food production has fallen by 80% without human agricultural systems. Our communication networks fail more each day. Our military vessels drift powerless in space." James listened without expression. He had served as a military attaché to the Zephyrian Empire for 5 years and had once considered Zephys a friend. That friendship had died when the Emperor voted to place humanity under protective custody. "Your empire controlled 47 star systems and commanded the respect of the galaxy," James replied coldly. "Surely beings of such advanced wisdom can solve these simple technical problems without help from immature humans." Zephys flinched at the bitter reference to the Council's justification for restricting humanity. "Admiral, we made an error in judgment. The Council was wrong to treat humanity as subjects rather than partners. I formally apologize for my vote and request the immediate return of human technical advisors to prevent further civilian casualties." "Apologize to whom, Emperor?" James asked. "To the human engineers you plan to chain to your failing infrastructure? To the human scientists you intended to control like laboratory animals? To the human colonists you would have relocated at your convenience?" The Emperor's shoulders sagged in defeat. "To all of them, Admiral. To humanity itself. We let fear overcome wisdom, and now we face the consequences of that choice." James terminated the transmission without another word. There would be time for diplomacy later, but not while the galaxy still burned with the consequences of its own arrogance. On the other side of the galaxy, Council Chairwoman Veltar of the Crystalline Federation stood in the emergency session chamber on Nexus Prime. The once magnificent council building showed signs of decay that would have been impossible months earlier. Sections of the structure remained dark due to power failures. Climate control systems malfunctioned regularly, leaving the chamber alternately freezing and sweltering. Only half of the Council's member species had representatives present. The others were too busy dealing with infrastructure collapse on their homeworlds to attend political meetings. Those who had managed to arrive looked haggard and desperate. "The situation continues to deteriorate across all sectors," Veltar announced to the sparse assembly. "Trade volume has dropped 94%. Communication between star systems now takes weeks instead of hours. Medical facilities on 200 worlds have suspended operations due to equipment failures." The representative from the Andorian Republic, a species known for their diplomatic composure, stood with visible agitation. "Chairwoman, we must face reality. Without human expertise, our civilizations cannot function. We need them back, whatever the cost." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The same species that had once feared human advancement now recognized it as their salvation. "The humans have established themselves beyond our borders," reported the Nexus Alliance delegate. "Our long-range sensors detect massive construction projects in the void between galaxies. They are building their own civilization from scratch rather than returning to ours." The implications of that statement settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. Humanity was not struggling without galactic civilization. They were thriving, creating something new and better while the old order collapsed behind them. Meanwhile, in the depths of space aboard the research vessel Innovation, Dr. Marcus Webb continued his analysis of galactic infrastructure decay. The data he collected painted an increasingly grim picture of civilizational collapse. The cascading failures are accelerating, he reported during his daily briefing to human leadership. The Vorthan Collective's industrial base has completely shut down. Their automated factories require human-designed AI systems to function, and they never learn to operate them manually. President Catherine Walsh listened from her temporary office aboard the colony ship Liberty. What about their ability to reverse engineer our technology? Marcus shook his head grimly. They're trying, but they lack the fundamental understanding. Our innovations weren't just advanced versions of existing technology. We developed entirely new principles of physics and engineering. They're like children trying to rebuild a computer when they barely understand electricity. The scope of the disaster became clear when reports arrived from the galaxy's core worlds. The Temporal Syndicate, masters of time manipulation for millennia, had lost control of their chronometer networks when human calibration systems failed. Temporal distortions were appearing randomly across their territory, aging some regions by centuries while leaving others frozen in time. The Voidwalkers, who had perfected dimensional travel long before humans reached the stars, found their gateway networks collapsing without human-designed stability fields. Ships attempting to use dimensional shortcuts were vanishing into unknown realms, never to return. Even the mighty Celestial Federation, oldest of the galaxy's civilizations, faced unprecedented crisis. Their orbital habitats, home to trillions of beings, were experiencing life support failures as human-maintained atmospheric processors went offline. Emergency evacuations were underway, but there was nowhere to send the refugees. 4 months after the exodus began, the first interspecies war erupted. The Zephyrian Empire, desperate for resources as their infrastructure failed, launched an invasion of Christine territory. The Christine Empire retaliated by seizing Vorthan industrial facilities. Within weeks, a dozen civilizations were at war, fighting over the scraps of a collapsing galactic economy. The wars were brutal but brief. Military technology that had been maintained by human expertise proved unreliable in combat. Ships designed with human input had built-in vulnerabilities that made them easy targets for enemies who knew their specifications. Within months, entire fleets were rendered inoperable by battles that would have been minor skirmishes in the past. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the galactic wars unfold from the bridge of the diplomatic vessel New Dawn. As humanity's former ambassador to the Council, she felt a complex mixture of sadness and vindication. These were the same civilizations that had claimed humans were too immature for self-governance, now behaving like primitive tribes fighting over territory. Elena, we're receiving a priority transmission from Chairwoman Veltar, her communications officer announced. She's requesting immediate diplomatic contact under emergency protocols. Elena had been expecting this call. The Crystalline Federation had always been the most reasonable of the major powers, and Veltar had been one of the few council leaders to express private doubts about restricting humanity. The holographic image of the crystalline chairwoman appeared on the bridge. Veltar's normally pristine crystal form showed stress fractures and discoloration that indicated extreme fatigue and distress. Ambassador Rodriguez, Veltar began, her voice harmonizing with desperation. I speak for what remains of the Galactic Council. We formally request the return of humanity to galactic civilization under terms of complete equality and autonomy. Elena studied the alien leader who had once commanded the respect of thousands of worlds. Chairwoman, humanity tried equality and partnership for 2 centuries. Your response was to vote 847-0 to make us your subjects. Why should we believe you've truly changed? Because our civilization is dying, Veltar replied with brutal honesty. 17 major wars have erupted in the past month. Billions of beings face starvation as agricultural systems fail. Our greatest achievements are crumbling to dust without human expertise. We need you not as subjects but as partners, as equals, as the foundation upon which a new galactic order can be built. Elena considered the offer carefully. Around her, the Human Leadership Council gathered to hear the proposal that could reshape the galaxy's future. You're offering partnership now, but what happens when your infrastructure is rebuilt? When your civilizations are stable again? Will you remember this lesson, or will fear once again overcome wisdom? Veltar's crystalline form dimmed with shame. I cannot promise that future generations will be wiser than we were, but I can promise that this generation has learned the price of arrogance. We know now that humanity is not a threat to be contained, but a gift to be treasured. Elena looked at President Walsh, Admiral Torres, and the other human leaders. The decision would affect not just humanity's future, but the fate of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Chairwoman, humanity has learned something during our exile, Elena said finally. We've learned that we don't need galactic civilization to thrive. We can build our own future among the stars, free from the prejudices and fears of older species. Veltar's hope visibly dimmed at those words. However, Elena continued, we've also learned that isolation serves no one. Humanity's greatest achievements came from cooperation with other species, from the exchange of ideas and cultures that made us all stronger. She paused, letting her words carry across the light years to the failing council chambers. Humanity will return to the galaxy, but not to the civilization that rejected us. We will help build something new, something better. A galactic community based on true equality, where no species claims authority over another, where advancement is celebrated rather than feared, and where partnership replaces domination. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar alone in the darkened council chambers. Around her, the monuments to 3,000 years of galactic governance crumbled as the old order finally died. 6 months later, representatives from 43 species gathered aboard the human station New Horizon to sign the Charter of Galactic Partnership. The document established a new form of interstellar cooperation based on voluntary association rather than hierarchical control. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as humanity's first president of galactic relations, watched as beings from across the galaxy pledged to work together as equals. The older, arrogant civilizations that had voted to restrict humanity were notably absent. Some had collapsed entirely, while others remained isolated in their dying territories, too proud to seek help from the species they had tried to control. But younger civilizations, those willing to embrace change and cooperation, found new prosperity in partnership with humanity. Together, they began rebuilding galactic civilization on a foundation of mutual respect rather than imposed authority. The great lesson had been learned at tremendous cost. Thousands of worlds had suffered during the collapse, and billions of beings had paid the price for their leaders' arrogance. But from that suffering came wisdom, and from that wisdom came a new age of cooperation among the stars. Humanity had proven their worth not through conquest or domination, but through the simple act of walking away. In leaving, they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be indispensable. In returning, they had shown what it meant to be merciful. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic partnership had begun, and humanity stood at its center not as rulers, but as the equals they had always deserved to be.